Just saying hi before a meeting. Oh no, hey Tiffany. Sad that you have to go to a meeting, Amanda. Hopefully you'll be able to be with us tomorrow. You always miss the quiet days, Amanda, which stinks, but I guess it's good for the playback. At least you get to listen to it in peace when you listen to it back, right? That's something. Could be worse, right? Could be worse. Let's make some coffee. I know she's totally passed out right now, so maybe we'll get a full read. Who knows? Who knows? How's everyone doing? Feeling good? Feeling fine? Having an okay week so far? I know there's not a lot to the week yet, but, you know. Whatever, just finish it. I don't like this one enough to prolong it. Don't like it enough to say let's keep it forever. Definitely won't be buying it again. Oh well. It is what it is. This cold can kick it, yes. I'm gonna go put her over on the thing. I'll be right back. How we all doing? Anyone have anything interesting going on this week? Yes, no, maybe? I didn't know. Perhaps. We have baby class today, and then mommy and baby workout class tomorrow. So I guess that's something. This looks like a very small amount of coffee. I feel like I should put a little more in it. I missed it. What'd you say, Tiffany? I missed it. We're downhill for my daughter. Oh, wow. Oh my gosh, that's amazing. Wow, you're really close to the end there. Congrats. Yes, very amazing. Can you believe that in the same group of people, there's someone whose daughter is old enough to get married and someone whose daughter just turned 1? Hey, Susan. It's pretty funny, right? I mean, like, it's pretty funny. I think. The 1-year-old is asleep, so there's that. In case anyone is wondering why I pinned the book that I pinned, it's because, you know, it's Black History Month, and also a certain documentary came out, and we're trying to show that we care, you know, about this one more. I'm not going to use the words because we all know I'll get flagged if I say certain things, but like, if you're looking for a way to teach your kids, I have this book for my daughter. She loves it. And if you want something for Black History Month and also to support the correct First Lady, there you go. Just offering it as an option, that's all. It's just an option. You do you. I own it. It's a great book. Let's get all my foamy things out. I am also glad, Amanda, that the other one flopped as hard as it did. but in my heart, it's not enough for it to flop. I need it to flop, and I also need the other one to do better. You know what I mean? Which, I mean, the bar is in hell, right? But that's all. Yes, the MO documentary is trending. That's why I was like, oh, let's jump on this and add to the fire, shall we? This is just me adding fuel to that fire. You know, doing my small part. I was gonna cue it up. You know, I don't have Netflix, otherwise I would. I would definitely do it if I had Netflix. I don't, but I do have this book, so that's why I did that. Okay. See you later, Amanda. Have a good meeting. We're gonna have a nice quiet book club today because someone is fully asleep, which is great. Hey, Jen, you got here just in time for a very quiet, lovely book club. She's fully asleep. So I know that technically we read like a page of the chapter yesterday, but I'm actually gonna go back because it was literally like one page and she was screaming the whole time. So I think better to just have chapter 9 be like a complete peaceful one read through rather than like disjointed screamy baby whatever. So we're gonna read chapter 9 today in its quiet entirety. Welcome to book club the way that it was meant to be had, in almost silence. The most relaxing part of my day begins now. So, chapter 9 is called Madame Weatherberry's Academy of Magic. After leaving the mine, Emeralda tried her best to remain as unimpressed by Madame Weatherberry's magic as possible. When the fairies transformed 4 field mice into unicorns, Emeralda's eyes grew very large, but she didn't make a sound. When Madame Weatherberry removed the brooch from her gown and turned it into a golden carriage, Emeralda's breathing increased, but she didn't say a word. However, when the unicorns transported them across the Southern Kingdom at an extraordinary pace, Emeralda was having a difficult time concealing her amazement. Isn't this spectacular? Xanthos said. If you whip her head around really fast, you can catch a glimpse of the land. The boy gave Emeralda an example, and she almost tried it herself, but then she remembered to keep her unenthusiastic appearance. Bristol giggled at Emeralda's failing facade. You know, it's okay to be a little excited, Bristol said. I mean, no matter what we see or do, nothing will ever make the mine less special to you. Emeralda pursed her lips and suppressed a smile, but it surfaced anyway. All right, this is pretty amazing, she said. For fun, the dwarfs and I used to race runaway carts through the mine, but they never went as fast as this. How are the unicorns doing this anyway? They're compelled by magic, Madame Weatherberry explained. Not only are unicorns the fastest animals on the planet, but they also always know their passengers' exact destination and the quickest route to get there. Are we close to the academy? Emeralda asked. Well, it will take a couple of hours to reach the Southern Kingdom's border, and then it's just a short distance through the east in between, Madame Weatherberry said. We should arrive just before sunset. We aren't getting out of the carriage again, are we? Xanthos asked. No, unfortunately not, Madame Weatherberry said. As much as I would love to teach you another lesson at the expense of a hostile creature, there is a special path in the forest that the unicorns know to take. Madame Weatherberry, I keep forgetting to ask, but what is the academy anyway? Bristol inquired. Like, is it a house, a cabin, a cave? Madame Weatherberry smiled playfully as she thought about her academy. Oh, you'll see, the fairy said. Some things in life are better seen than described. Hey, Isabella. Hey, Naisa. For those who are just joining, we went back and restarted the chapter from yesterday to make it nice and quiet and peaceful because the baby is sleeping, so why not enjoy it? So we are pretty much back maybe like 2 paragraphs from where we left off yesterday, and they are traveling to the academy. A couple of hours later, the golden carriage approached the eastern border of the Southern Kingdom. Just like the western border, the thick forest of the in-between grew along the eastern border like a gigantic twisted fence. The trees were so close together that there was barely room for a person to walk between them, but the unicorns charged ahead. They found an opening that Bristol never could have spotted on her own, and the steeds pulled the golden carriage onto a narrow road. As they traveled through the in-between, the unicorns slowed down to guide the carriage safely down the winding path. Bristol was unsettled by the eerie sight of the dark forest outside her window. She expected a ferocious animal or maybe a monster to jump out from the darkness and attack the carriage at any moment. Bristol figured that Xanthos and Emeralda were feeling the same way because both of her companions covered their eyes and sunk down in their seats. Unsurprisingly, Madame Weatherberry wasn't affected by their frightening surroundings at all. The fairy kept a confident and watchful eye on the trees passing by, like she was prepared for whoever or whatever they might cross. Time seemed to move much slower in the in-between than it did in the southern kingdom, but eventually the golden carriage came to an abrupt stop. Bristol, Emeralda, and Xanthos looked out the window and saw that Unicorns had stopped because the road was blocked by a massive hedge wall. The strange plant was taller than the trees and stretched for miles in both directions. The leaves and branches were so thick that the hedge was practically solid. "We're here," Madame Weatherberry said cheerfully. Her students had no idea what the fairy was talking about. The longer the unicorns stayed put at the dead end, the more they felt like sitting ducks in dangerous forest. Suddenly, the hedge started to shake, and it snapped. The leaves and branches slowly parted to form an archway that was wide enough for the carriage to fit through. The unicorns moved under the arch and entered a long leafy tunnel that cut through the thick hedge. The passageway went on for several hundred feet, and the children were amazed by how dense the hedge was. It was so dark in the tunnel that Bristol couldn't see her hands in front of her. "Madame Weatherberry, what is this?" Bristol asked. "Just a little barrier that I planted around the property to protect the academy," Madame Weatherberry said. "A little barrier?" Xanthos asked. "The shrub is enormous." "It may seem like overgrown shrubbery, but the hedge is actually equipped with a very powerful spell," Madame Weatherberry said. "It only opens for people and animals with magic in their blood. It keeps us safe from all the restless creatures wandering around the in-between." The unicorns reached the end of the tunnel and stopped at another leafy wall. Beams of bright light shone into the dark tunnel as a second arch opened and granted the carriage access to Madame Weatherberry's property. The unicorns exited the hedge barrier, and their young passengers realized that they weren't in the creepy woods anymore. The golden carriage proceeded down the path to a rolling field of the most vibrant wildflowers that the children had ever seen. The land was sprinkled with trees that were covered in colorful maple leaves, blushing cherry blossoms, and blooming magnolias. A crystal clear lake was lined with weeping willows, and it spilled into streams with ponds with vivid water lilies. The picturesque estate stretched toward a cliff overlooking the sparkly blue ocean, where the sun was setting in a horizon of rosy clouds. "I don't believe it," Bristol said. "It's like we're in a painting." "I have never seen this much color in my whole life," Emerald exclaimed. "Well, we must be dead," Xanthos said. "Our carriage crashed in the forest, and now we're in paradise. That's really the only explanation." Madame Weatherberry was incredibly touched by the excitement on her students' faces. "I've waited a long time to see smiles like those," she said. "Many years of hard work were put into developing this place, and I hope it becomes just as much your home as it is mine." "Good morning, Mary." The carriage continued down the path, and there were more surprises at every turn. Bristol was mesmerized when she saw that there were herds of unicorns grazing and frolicking throughout the fields all around them. She looked up and noticed that the sky was filled with huge, colorful butterflies and enormous birds with long auburn feathers. "Oh, hey, Anya. Look at all the unicorns in the field," Bristol said. "And up there, have you ever seen such big birds and butterflies before?" "I've seen some pretty nasty bugs and bats in the mines, but nothing like those," Emeralda said, and Madame Weatherberry chuckled. "Actually, those aren't butterflies or birds," she said. "You might want to take a closer look." Bristol, Emeralda, and Xanthos pressed their faces against the window for a better view, and after a thorough inspection, their children realized that the butterflies had tiny human-like bodies and wore clothing made from leaves and flower petals. The tiny creatures flew in and out of the miniature mushroom homes along the path. The birds in question had heads and wings like eagles, and front claws like reptiles, and hind legs and tails like lions. They soared through the sky like hawks and brought squirrels and mice and fish and other prey back to the hungry hatchlings waiting for them in their nests. I always have to keep my fingers busy with this book. It's hard not to spoil it. Oh, I know. Well, you know what the funny thing for me is, Anya, and I don't know if any of you who read it with us last time feel this way, there's a lot of it that I forgot. I mean, like, I remember the overarching concepts, but like some of the details and like what happens chapter to chapter, I definitely didn't remember in their detail anyway. Like, I know that they go to the academy, but I didn't remember any of this part. You know what I mean? So I don't know. That's just me. What the heck are those things? Xanthos asked.
Those are pixies and griffins, Madame Weatherbury said. They're both easily offended, so please make sure you never call them bugs and birds to their face.
So, they still exist? Bristol asked. In The Truth About Magic, you wrote that humankind had hunted all the magical animals into extinction.
Well, they nearly did, Madame Weatherbury said. Fortunately, I was able to find a few survivors and save the species before they were lost forever. It was safer to let humanity go on believing they had all been annihilated. Sadly, I wasn't able to rescue all of the magical animals that used to roam the earth. This property is as much a sanctuary for the pixies, griffins, and the unicorns as it is for us.
I actually forgot as much about Xanthos. Yeah, I usually forget, but when you mention certain characters, yes, that's true. When certain things are mentioned, they do come flooding back. I agree with all of that, yes. Emeralda gasped and pointed out the window. Is that what I think it is? She asked. Bristol and Xanthos looked in the direction Emeralda was referring to and had the same reaction. In the distance, perched on the edge of a cliff overlooking the ocean, was a golden castle. The castle had tall, pointed towers and hundreds of wide windows, and an entire structure sparkled in the sunlight. The carriage continued along the path through the property and stopped at the castle's front steps. Madame Weatherbury escorted the children outside and gestured excitedly to the castle before them.
Welcome to Madame Weatherbury's Academy of Magic, the fairy said. What do you think of the new name? I decided that less was more.
Bristol, Xanthos, and Emeralda didn't respond because they were completely overwhelmed by the dazzling structure in front of them. Madame Weatherbury was right. Some things in life were better seen than described. Even after all the incredible books she had read at the library, Bristol doubted that words could ever explain the castle's magnificent appearance or the exhilarating feeling that it gave her. It was difficult to believe something so beautiful existed in this world, but the castle never faded from view. Madame Weatherbury clapped her hands, and the unicorns were released from their reins. The steeds galloped into the nearby field and joined their grazing herd. She snapped her fingers to shrink the golden carriage to a brooch again and then pinned it to her gown. The castle's giant front doors opened, and 2 little girls and an old woman came outside to greet the new arrivals. The first little girl was about 10 years old and wore a dress made from dripping patches of honeycomb. Her bright orange hair was styled into a beehive, and it was home to a live swarm of bumblebees. The second little girl looked also 10 years old, and she wore a navy robe over sapphire bathing suit. Instead of hair, a continuous stream of water flowed down her body and evaporated as it reached her feet. She was like a walking waterfall. The old woman was dressed much more simply than the girls and wore a plum dress and a matching apron. She had grayish violet hair in a messy bun, and other than the unusual color hair, her appearance wasn't as magical as the others.
Children, I would like you to meet Miss Tangerina Turkin, Miss Skyline Lavenders, and the Academy's housekeeper, Miss V. Madame Weatherbury said. Girls, these are our new students, Bristol Evergreen, Emeralda Stone, and Xanthos Hayfield.
Mrs. V was excited to see the newcomers, and she hurried down the front steps to give each of them a bear hug, rocking them back and forth. Well, I don't mean to invade your personal space, but I am just so happy that I could burst, Mrs. V said with tearful eyes. And Madame Weatherbury's been dreaming of opening this academy for so long, and the day's finally here. I hope you brought an appetite, because I am cooking up a feast in that kitchen. Does anyone have any allergies or dietary restrictions I should know about? Bristol, Emerald, and Xanthos all shrugged and shook their heads. Well, that is a big relief, Mrs. V said. Tonight, I'm serving one of my specialties, Griffin pot pie. Now, I'm just kidding. You should have seen the looks on your faces when I said that. I could never cook something like that. Besides, griffins are way too fast to catch. Woohoo! Anyway, in all seriousness, I couldn't be more thrilled to have you. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm gonna better run back to the kitchen before dinner girl's legs and walks away. And don't walk away. And actually, that's one's based on a true story. Oh, I'll see you inside. Mrs. V hurried back up the front steps and dashed into the castle. Bristol, Xanthos, and Emeralda, slightly terrified after that meeting with the animated housekeeper, looked to Madame Weatherbury for reassurance.
Don't worry. Mrs. V's cooking is much better than her comedy, she said, and although the housekeeper seemed eccentric and goofy,
Bristol, Xanthos, and Emeralda appreciated her attempt to welcome them to the academy. I also forgot about Mrs. V. Yeah, now you say you're right. I'm right with you. I completely forgot about her. Tangerina and Skyline, however, stayed on the castle's front steps and eyed the newcomers like they were competition of some kind. Bristol sensed the tension, and she tried to break the ice. I love what you both are wearing, she said. Are you students too? Tangerina and Skyline both grunted, insulted by Bristol's comment. We're apprentices, Tangerina said in a condescending tone. Oh, what's the difference? Bristol asked. We apprentice things, Skyline said like it was totally obvious.
Bristol, Xanthos, and Emeralda looked to one another to see if Skylene made sense to anyone else, but no one knew what that girl was talking about. Tangerina was embarrassed by her friend's remark, and she quickly pulled her aside. Skylene, I told you to let me do all the talking when the newbies showed up, she whispered. Oh, I thought you said when the new bees showed up, Skylene whispered back. I thought you were finally doing something different with your hair. You never listen to me, Tangerina said. You've got too much water in your ears. Skylene tilted her head to the left and then to the right, just enough for a gallon of water to pour out from both of her ears. Tangerina rolled her eyes at her friend and turned back to the newcomers. As I was saying, we're apprentices and we are much more advanced than students, she explained. We're going to assist Madame Weatherberry as she teaches the three of you to use your magic. Now that you're here, I can see she's going to need all the help she can get. Tangerina, please be nice to the new students, Madame Weatherberry said. We'll all be learning and growing together no matter how advanced some of us might be. But we can discuss all of that during our first lesson tomorrow. In the meantime, let's give our new recruits a tour of the castle while Mrs. V finishes preparing dinner. The fairy escorted the students and the apprentices up the front steps and through the castle's front doors. Bristol's mouth dropped open at the first glimpse of the castle's interior because it was just as breathtaking as the exterior. The entrance hall had a shimmering white walls, sparkling silver floors, and golden pillars that stretched into towering ceiling above them. In the center of the hall was a gigantic tree that grew crystal leaves and blossoms, an elegant staircase that curled around the tree, and steps that floated in mid-air as the stairs spiraled around the upper levels of the castle. This castle is one of the last magical residences left, Madame Weatherberry said. The majority of them were destroyed when King Champion I declared that magic was a crime. I inherited the estate. Oh my god, I'm so sorry, we have to pause for a second. My friend just texted me to tell me what baby she's having. We're gonna pause for 2 seconds. I just have to message her back really quick. I'm so sorry. We've been waiting to find out from her test, and I'm just so, well, I'll be right back. We're gonna pause for 2 seconds. I just have to message her back really quick. I'm so sorry. We've been waiting to find out from her test, and I'm just so, well, I'll be right back, I promise. I'll be right back, I promise. Okay, sorry about that. It's so cute. Our children are only a month apart, and we're both having babies this summer also. So I was really excited to find out what she was having because it's like built-in friends for my children. So I love it. So excited. Sorry, I had to take that moment to respond to her and just tell her how excited I was for her. It's wonderful, just wonderful. We've been waiting for weeks to find out what she was having because, you know, it's they're all friends, you know. So now we both have one of each, which is very exciting. So, I mean, not that it would matter. We'd love 2 boys, 2 girls, whatever. It's irrelevant, but it's just very cute to know. And now I'm gonna pass all my girl clothes on to her since I'm having a boy, and she can pass her boy clothes on to me since she's having a girl, so we can trade these. It's very nice. No one has to go buy new clothes. All right. Sorry, let's get back on track. Sorry about that. It is exciting. It's very exciting. We're basically just gonna trade everything. Okay. The majority of them were destroyed when King Champion I declared that magic was a crime. I inherited this estate from my family, and I've kept it hidden and protected ever since. It's very important that none of you leave the property without me. As you know, the In-Between is full of people and creatures who would like to harm us. Something about Madame Weatherberry's warning didn't sit well with Bristol. Madame Weatherberry, she asked, I thought you said that your family was human. The fairy was pleasantly surprised by Bristol's attention to detail. Oh, I forgot to mention that, Madame Weatherberry said. While my birth family were human, I was referring to the fairies who adopted me and taught me my magic. You see, the magical community is lucky because we get to create new families if our relatives forsake us. The 6 of us may not be related by blood, but with time, I hope that we'll regard each other as chosen family. Since they had all just met, it was hard for Bristol to picture becoming that close with the other students, but still it was nice to imagine someone could fill the void created by leaving her mother and brothers behind. Now, if you'll just follow me, I will show you to the sitting room, Madam Weatherbury said. The fairy led them down a corridor to the right entrance hall and entered a spacious room with the silk sofas and tufted lounge chairs. The walls, sorry, that was the worst sound ever. That was my nail against the chair, and I'm so sorry because that's horrific. Woo! The walls were covered in floral wallpaper and decorated with heads of horned animals. Once they stepped inside the sitting room, the flowers and vines in the wallpaper became three-dimensional, and a flowery aroma filled the air. The deer and the elk heads mounted on the walls came to life and snacked on the plants growing all around them. Be careful around the decorative heads. They like to bite, Madam Weatherbury warned, but moving on, the dining room is just around the corner. And down the hall from the sitting room was another large room with a table made of wide, flat rock. The dining room was illuminated by a cluster of glowing moonstones that hovered over the table like a chandelier. The walls were dark and decorated with twinkling lights so that the room looked like a starry night sky. As Bristol examined the lights, she screamed when a shooting star suddenly shot across the ceiling. If only Bristol knew how close it was. Oh, seriously. Breakfast is served every morning at 7 o'clock sharp. Lunch starts at noon and dinner begins at 6 o'clock, Madam Weatherbury informed them. Please be on time for meals. Mrs. V is a perfectionist when it comes to her food, and she hates serving her dishes cold. The kitchen is through the swinging doors at the end of the dining room, and Mrs. V's chambers are just beyond that. Well, that's everything that's here on the first floor. Now, if you'll please follow me to the entrance hall, I'll show you back to my office on the second floor.
But Madam Weatherbury, Xanthos asked, you said this was a school. Where are the classrooms?
There aren't any classrooms in my castle, the fairy said. I'll be teaching the majority of my lessons outside on the academy grounds. I've always thought that fresh ideas are easier to maintain with fresh air. The tour returned to the entrance hall, and they carefully climbed the floating staircase to the second level of the castle. Madam Weatherbury's office was through a pair of wooden doors, just like the cover of The Truth About Magic. They were engraved with the images of unicorns and a griffin. The office was a circular chamber with incredible views of the ocean and the Academy's whole property. The furniture was made of glass, including a bulky desk that sat at the far end. The chamber was lined with shelves of spell books and cabinets of potions and elixirs. The high ceiling was filled with white fluffy clouds that changed into the shape of different animals as they bobbed up and down. Instead of fire, a stream of bubbles emitted from the grand fireplace and floated through the air. The entire wall above the fireplace was covered in a massive replica of the map of magic. To the students' amusement, the rack of elaborate fascinators was placed by Madam Weatherbury's desk. The fairy owned a hat in every color. If you ever need something, please don't hesitate to find me in here, Madam Weatherbury said. However, on the rare occasion that I'm called away from the academy, my office is off limits to students. Well, now, if there aren't any other questions, I'll show you to your bedrooms on the third floor.
We have our own rooms? Xanthos asked.
Oh, yes, Madam Weatherbury said. The castle has 7 bedrooms and counting.
What do you mean, and counting?
Esmeralda asked. That's one of the many perks of living in a magical residence, Madam Weatherbury explained. The castle grows extra bedrooms based on the number of residents, and it usually designs the chambers around the occupant's specific needs. There were only bedrooms for Tangerine and Skylene on the 3rd floor when I left the castle to recruit you, but there should be one for each of you now. Shall we take a look?
The students eagerly followed Madam Weatherbury up the stairs to a long corridor on the 3rd floor. Just as she predicted, the corridor had 5 doors. The latter 3 looked much newer than the first 2, like the corridor had recently been renovated. As they passed the first door, the students peered inside Tangerina's bedroom and instantly understood what Madam Weatherbury meant about the rooms being designed for the needs of the resident. All the walls and furniture in Tangerina's bedroom were made of honeycomb, and everything there was drenched in honey. Just like her hair, the chamber was home to 1,000 buzzing bumblebees, and the floor was covered with live daisies to provide the swarm with nectar. The room across the corridor from Tangerina's bedroom belonged to Skylene. The chamber had no floor, and instead it dropped straight into an indoor pool. Every inch of the room was tiled with blue porcelain, and every piece of furniture was a gondola, Learn to read, Sasha. The only piece of furniture was a gondola bed floating on the pool's surface. The third room in the corridor had a heavy steel door, and Madame Weatherbury grunted as she heaved it open. "Ugh, Xanthos, I'm assuming this one belongs to you," she said. And inside, the entire room was made out of the same industrial steel as the door. There were no windows in the chamber, and absolutely nothing was flammable. Even Xanthos's metal bed had foil sheets. Instead of carpet or tile, the floor was finished with metal grates, and instead of a ceiling, the brick chimney was built over the room. "It's like a giant oven," Xanthos said enthusiastically. "Even if I took off my motor metal, I wouldn't even be able to hurt anyone in here." "It's the perfect place for you to blow off some steam," Madame Weatherbury said. "Now, Emeralda, I believe your room is next." Behind the fourth door in the corridor was a dark room with dirt walls. There was a four-poster bed made of stalagmites and a wardrobe constructed out of a mine cart. There was also a workbench that held a stack of coals. Emeralda stepped inside her room and had a dizzying moment of déjà vu. "It's just like my cave in the mine," she said. "It even smells like dwarves in here." "Hopefully it will keep you from being too homesick," Madame Weatherbury said. "And last but not least, we have Bristol's room." The fifth and final door in the corridor led to the base of a tower. There was a bed identical to the bed she had in the Evergreen house, and a big comfy armchair exactly like the ones she enjoyed at the Chariot Hills Library. But most amazing of all were the walls covered with shelves of books from floor to ceiling. A display case in the corner of the room held over 24 pairs of reading glasses, and like Madame Weatherbury's collection of fascinators, there was a pair in every color. Oh man, what a dream, right? Would that we all were so lucky. As Bristol looked around her new bedroom, her eyes filled with happy tears and her heart fluttered in her chest. She scanned the titles on the shelves and caressed the book's spines like she was saying hello to long-lost friends. "The Tales of Tedbit the Twitch, volumes 2 through 10. She was shocked to find them there. "I didn't even know there was one sequel, let alone 9. "Oh, and look at this," Madame Weatherbury said, and she pointed to another one of the books on the shelves. "You even have a copy of the Truth About Magic. Perhaps you'll be inspired to finish it one of these days, but no pressure, of course. Well, children, that completes our tour of the castle. You're more than welcome to inspect the other rooms in the towers, but I'm afraid you're only going to find a century worth of storage and cobwebs." Suddenly, a chime rang out through the castle to announce the start of dinner. Unlike the gong at the Bootstrap Correctional Facility, these chimes were pleasant and inviting. It's like they were announcing the start of a grand performance. "It sounds like Mrs. V is finally ready for us," Madame Weatherbury said. "Let's not keep her waiting." The students followed Madame Weatherbury down the corridor, but Bristol stayed in her room for a few moments before joining them. Of all the astonishing things that she had seen, nothing was more beautiful than the sight of her very own library. At dinner, the students were served a 3-course meal of tomato soup, grilled chicken, and roasted carrots with blueberry pie. Other than the colorful berries and muffins that Bristol ate in the golden carriage, this was the most delicious food that she had ever tasted. She couldn't believe that she would be treated to 3 meals like this every day. It was quite a contrast to the food at the Bootstrap Correctional Facility. Over the meal, Madame Weatherbury told the new students stories about the obstacles she faced while she was starting their academy. She recalled how she met with several sovereigns of the 4 kingdoms, and despite her persuasive requests, only King Champion the 14th granted permission to recruit students in the Southern Kingdom. So Bristol, Xanthos, and Emeralda were on the edge of their seats as they listened to this exciting tale. "May I have some water?" Xanthos asked after stuffing his face with his 3rd helping of blueberry pie. "I can help you with that," Skylene said, and she leaned over the table and stuck her hand in the boy's glass. A stream of water poured out of her index finger and filled his glass to the brim. Bristol and Emeralda were impressed by Skylene's trick, but Xanthos was disturbed by the liquid coming out of her body. Is there any other water?" he asked. "I found my advent calendar slimes from 2024, currently enjoying." "Aw, that's amazing. You should post a picture of them. I miss them." Aw. I had mine, but I had to clear out when I cleared the room out to become her room. I had to be choosy of what would fit in my tiny closet office. Of all the 7 people around the table, Tangerine seemed to be enjoying herself the least. She grunted at everything the newcomers said and rolled her eyes at every question they asked. She found their curiosity about magic to be incredibly irritating, like they should have been more prepared before arriving. "So what do you do?" she asked. "Sorry?" Bristol said. "Well, I know that you're all here because you can do magic, but like, what are your specialties?" she asked. What's a specialty? Bristol asked. Tangerina and Skylene were shocked by her ignorance. A specialty is your strongest magical talent, Tangerina explained. It's usually a trait that reveals itself in your magic and separates you from the rest of the world. Bees are my specialty, water Skylene, and based on his room upstairs, I'm guessing Xanthos' specialty has something to do with fire. Oh, that's why his room is made of metal, Skylene said. I was hoping it had something to do with barbecue. How disappointing. Tangerina ignored her friend. As I was saying, she went on, Xanthos was easy to figure out, but I'm still not sure about you two. Emerald was a little annoyed by Tangerina's need to categorize them, so she closed her eyes and placed an open palm on the stone table and transformed the whole thing into a giant amethyst. That's what I do, she said blankly, and despite their best attempts to conceal it, Tangerina and Skylene were awestruck by Emerald's demonstration. What about you, Bristol? Skylene asked. What's your specialty? Oh, I'm really not sure that I have one of those, she said. I've never done magic without the help of a spell. All fairies have specialties, Tangerina said, and she crossed her arms. Unless your specialty is that you're not special at all. All right, bye, Susan. We'll see you later. Tangerina, please keep your stinger to yourself, Madame Weatherberry reprimanded. So far, Bristol has shown a talent for manifestation, and she's one of the brightest stars on my map of magic. Just because her specialty hasn't revealed itself yet doesn't mean it won't do so very soon. Madame Weatherberry gave Bristol an encouraging wink, but that didn't make Tangerina's comments any less hurtful. Without an obvious specialty, Bristol felt inferior to the other students, and she started wondering if she even belonged at the academy. The embarrassment made her blush, and she counted down the seconds until dinner was over. Well, I know one thing for sure, Mrs. V said. My specialty has always been food. And if anyone disagrees with that after this meal, they can go catch a griffin. Hoo-hoo! After dinner, Madame Weatherberry excused the students from the table, and they all went up to their rooms to get ready for bed. Bristol was feeling crummy from Tangerina's remarks, but fortunately she knew the perfect remedy to take her mind off of it. She had selected Tales of Tidbit the Twitch, Volume 2 from her shelf, and chose a fresh pair of reading glasses before crawling into her soft bed. While Bristol read the sequel to her favorite book, an abrupt storm blew in from the ocean and soaked the academy grounds. Bristol was startled by the booming thunder and the flashes of lightning outside her window, but she wasn't going to let the weather disturb her first night at the castle. Her floor mates, however, were not so brave. A few minutes into the storm, there was a soft knock on Bristol's door. Come in, she called. The door swung open, and Emeralda peeked inside with large and fearful eyes. Sorry to bother you, Bristol, Emeralda said. Oh, is everything all right with your room? Bristol asked. Oh, no, everything's fine, she said. I'm just not used to thunder. One of the best parts of living in an underground mine is you don't have to worry about weather. If you wouldn't mind, I was wondering, I was wondering, you're more than welcome to sleep in here if the thunder's scaring you, Bristol said, and Emeralda sighed with relief. Oh, gee, thanks. What are you reading? Tales of Tidbit the Twitch, Volume 2, Bristol said. It's the sequel to my favorite book of all time. Have you ever heard of it? Emeralda thought about it and she shook her head. No, Papa used to read me stories before bed, but I don't remember that one. Would you sleep better if I read the first one to you? Bristol asked. Really? Emeralda said. Are you sure you wouldn't mind? No, not at all, she said. It's to your left, on the shelf. Emeralda retrieved the Tales of Tidbit the Twitch and joined Bristol in bed. Bristol opened the book to the very first page, but before starting to read, both girls jumped at the growling thunder outside. It was followed by the frantic sound of feet running down the corridor. Xanthos appeared in the doorway just as startled by the weather as Emeralda had been. Hey, girls, Xanthos peeped. Crazy storm, huh? Yeah, it's wild, Bristol said. How are you, holding up? Me? Oh, well, I'm doing great, Xanthos said, but his panicked face told them otherwise. I just came here to check on you two, so, we're fine, Bristol said. Actually, Emeralda and I were just about to start a book if you're interested in hearing a story. Another crack of thunder influenced Xanthos' decision, and he leapt into bed with the girls. Bristol and Emeralda were tickled by his reaction, and they made room for him. Bristol cleared her throat in preparation for reading aloud, but just as she started the first sentence, Tangerina and Skylene burst into her room and shut the door behind them, and as if a terrible storm had been chasing them. Oh, hello, ladies, Bristol said. What seems to be the problem? Tangerina and Skylene were too embarrassed to admit that they were scared. They looked at each other, hoping that they could come up with a good excuse. I wet the bed, Skylene said. Tangerina rolled her eyes. Skylene, your bed is always wet, she whispered. Oh, yeah, she mumbled back. We just heard noises coming from your room and we wanted to make sure that the three of you weren't causing trouble, Tangerina said. Well, as you can see, we're being very well behaved, Bristol said. We're just about to read a book to calm our nerves, that's all. Oh, good. I'm glad you're not up to any mischief, Tangerina said. Now that we've seen you're acting appropriately, we can head back to our rooms. Although she said they were leaving, neither Tangerina nor Skylene made a move. You know, just because apprentices are more advanced than students doesn't mean that you enjoy stories any less, Bristol said. You're both welcome to stay with us if the storm is making you uneasy. And before Tangerina or Skylene could respond, thunder roared louder than before, and the girls shrieked and dived into bed with the others. I suppose we could stick around for just like a few minutes, Tangerina said. What are you reading anyway? The Tales of Tidbit the Twitch by Tom Free Taylor, Bristol said. What's it about? Skylene asked. Emeralda grunted and eyed the others threateningly. If everyone would just shut up and stop interrupting her, maybe we would find out what it's about, she scolded. All the classmates went quiet so Bristol could start the book. Once upon a time, there was a kingdom of mice, she read. And of all the mice in the kingdom, none was braver than a young mouse named Tidbit Twitch. Bristol read the book for hours, and she was delighted by what a captivated audience her floor mates were. Eventually, all the students and apprentices began to fall asleep, and she marked their last page so they could continue the story later. They all slept in a pile on Bristol's bed while they waited for the weather to die down. It was only their first night in the castle, but thanks to a thunderstorm and a good story, the children at Madame Weatherbury's Academy of Magic were already acting like the chosen family that their instructor hoped that they would be. Guys, they're a book club. Can I be Bristol, please? Am I the Bristol in the story? Can I be Bristol, please? She's reading to them. It's so cute. Everybody pick your person. She's like, I'll read to you guys. It's very cute, right? It feels very familiar. She's like, it's okay. If you're having a bad day, I'll just read to you and I'll make it better. It's funny. You're Skylene, just like a little ditzy. Skylene's like Nisa. I would never say this about you, but I'm gonna say it about Skylene. Skylene's like not all there. You know what I mean? Like she's just a little like, I wet the bed when you're made of water. Like, not the greatest excuse. Tangerina's like, Jesus Christ, this woman. That moment is very funny. She's like, she like looks at her and she's like, your bed is always, it's water. Your bed is made of water. You're water. Your whole thing is water. I'm done with you. I'm going back to my bees. But anyway. All right. She is still fully asleep and it's only 9:07. You're deaf, Esmeralda. Just like a little sarcastic, but like quietly getting your stuff done. Yeah, I like that for you. She's got like an edge to her, you know? She's got an edge, but like she wants it quietly, right? You know what I mean? She's like, I really like being here. And if you all could shut up, I could enjoy myself. That is totally you, Jen. You're like, I really like this book club. And if you could all shut up, I could listen to the story for a second. That's fair. Cranky, but excited. Yeah, exactly. She's like, be quiet so we can enjoy ourselves. Anya, there's more characters coming, and I think we all know your favorites from last time, Anya, so I'm gonna zip my mouth and not say anything. I wanted to say it was another character, but she's like, exactly, I was gonna say no, so we have to keep our mouths shut for future people who are showing up. I love it. Well, I love this for all of us. Anyway, let's see. Oh my God, you guys. Oh my God. Chapter 10 is called The Musician's Daughter, and for those of you who know, you know, I did not realize who was coming in this next chapter, so we need to go and read right now so that we can enjoy ourselves, because the ones who know. I need to put myself into the right character here. This is such an important character. We cannot, justice must be done for this character. The following morning, the students and apprentices gathered around the dining table and laughed about their impromptu sleepover while they enjoyed breakfast. Even Tangerina admitted that she had fun listening to Bristol read the tales of Tidbit the Twitch. Madame Weatherbury was delighted that her pupils were getting along so well, but naturally she reminded them how important it was to get rest on nights before their lessons, and she asked them to save future sleepovers for special occasions. Halfway through breakfast, Mrs. V entered the dining room and presented Madame Weatherbury with a black envelope.
Well, it's just arrived for you, madam, Mrs. V said, and the envelope immediately caught Bristol's attention because it was scaled like a reptile's skin and sealed with a wax colored of dried blood. Madam Weatherbury went pale the minute that she saw the envelope's strange texture. She opened it with a butter knife and unfolded it to see the message written inside. The post delivers all the way out here? Xanthos asked, and Tangerina rolled her eyes. It's not from the human post, it's from the magic post, she explained. When you place your envelope in a magic mailbox and close the lid behind it, the letter is instantly transported to the mailbox that it's addressed to. It works on smaller objects too, Skylene said, and she slumped back in her chair. I'm still waiting for my gerbil to be sent back. Wow, instant mail, Xanthos said. What a concept. And while the others talked about magic posts, Bristol's eyes never left Madame Weatherbury. I'm sorry, I have to laugh. I'm still waiting for my gerbil to be returned. Skylene, Naisa, please, contain yourself. Get your gerbil back. She assumed the black envelope contained bad news because the fairy's posture became stiff when she read it. Once she finished reading the note, Madame Weatherbury folded it and put it back into the envelope. Her eyes filled with concern and she stared off into space. Madame Weatherbury, is something wrong? Bristol asked. Oh, no, not at all, Madame Weatherbury said, but she didn't elaborate further. Who wrote to you? Bristol asked. Just an old friend, she said. Unfortunately, our mutual acquaintance has been battling a terrible illness, and my friend was writing to update me on her progress. Now, if you'll excuse me, I'm going to go write her back before we begin today's lesson, and I'll meet you all outside in just a few minutes. Madame Weatherbury held the black envelope by the corner, and it burst into violet flames, incinerating the message. The fairy excused herself from the dining table and headed her office on the second floor. Although Madame Weatherbury had said there wasn't a problem, Bristol knew that their instructor was not being honest with them. Madame Weatherbury left with the same intensity that she had expressed after Bristol mentioned the Northern Kingdom the day before. I'm glad you asked her that, she told Bristol. I've always wondered who sends Madame Weatherbury those letters, but I never wanted to pry. You mean they're sent here frequently? Bristol asked. Oh, yeah, almost every day, Skylene said. But if you ask me, I don't think it's actually an update on her sick friend. What do you think they are? Bristol asked, and Skylene grinned. I think Madame Weatherbury has a secret admirer. Everyone around the dining table laughed at Skylene's theory, except for Bristol. She didn't think Madame Weatherbury had an admirer, but the fairy definitely had a secret. The last time I had a secret admirer, dragons roamed the earth. Mrs. V quipped. Get it? Because I'm so old? Even with an explanation, her young audience didn't crack a smile. Sorry, if my jokes were good, I certainly wouldn't have this job. The housekeeper cleared the dining table and stepped into the kitchen, and once she was gone, Emeralda turned to Tangerina and Skylene with a sharp look. Are any of her jokes good? She asked. Tangerina and Skylene slowly shook their heads in agony like they had been the victim of Mrs. V's insufferable humor for far too long. No, Tangerina groaned. No, not a single one. And after they finished breakfast, the children waited for Madame Weatherbury outside the castle's front steps. It was taking the instructor much longer to respond to the letter than she had estimated, and Bristol became even more suspicious. Just when they were about to check on their teacher, the students and apprentices heard a peculiar noise coming from the distance. It was a compilation of horns, drums, and cymbals that played the same quirky tune over and over again, and they all looked toward the edge of the property. A colorful caravan emerged from the hedge barrier. It was bright blue with red wheels and a yellow roof, and instead of the caravan being pulled by horses, a man and woman sitting in the driver's seat propelled the contraption forward by moving pedals with their feet. The strangers wore makeup and flamboyant clothing. The man had a mustache and a golden earring in his right ear, as well as a top hat with a large red feather. The woman wore a scarf over her head and several beaded necklaces and a long flowing dress. And as they pedaled toward the castle, the gears triggered the instruments attached to the vehicle in a repetitive tune playing. Identical signs on both sides of the caravan read, "The Goose Troop." The couple steered their vehicle to the front steps of the castle and pulled the brakes. When the caravan came to a complete stop, the music finally stopped as well. The visitors seemed relieved to see the children outside, but the students stared at the extravagant wagon with wide and curious eyes. Well, hello there, the man said and tipped his hat. Is this, Madame Weatherbury's school for the magically... You know what? I tried to use the same voice as last time, but I think it's a different voice that he needs. We're going to backtrack a little now that we know more. Rewind. I gotta get it. I gotta get it right. Hold on. What does he sound like? Yeah, right. He sounds a little bit like this. Well, hello there, the man said and tipped his top hat. Is this Madame Weatherbury's school for the magically inclined? It's just Madame Weatherbury's Academy of Magic now, Tangerina said. She decided that less was more,
Skylene added. Oh, well, that's just terrific, the woman said and called into the caravan behind her. Hey, Lucy, get your things, 'cause we're here. The vehicle's back door was aggressively kicked open by a girl of about 13 who jumped down from inside. She was small and plump. Her hair was short and curly, and she had a round and rosy face. The girl wore a black bowler hat and an oversized black jumpsuit with big black boots and a bottle cap necklace. She carried a small suitcase made from taxidermied porcupine, and a canteen made from a beaver skull was draped over her shoulder. The odd girl scowled at the majestic castle in front of her like she was greatly overwhelmed by it. Yeah, well, this place is obnoxiously cheerful, she said. Excuse me, but who are you? Tangerina asked. Hey, Sophie, long time no see. How are you feeling? The girl turned to the students on the front steps and she glared at them with a raised eyebrow like they were just as disappointing as the castle. The name is Lucy, she said. You don't recognize me? Recognize you from what? Skylene asked. Well, I happen to be a famous tambourine player, Lucy said, and she pointed to the sign on the caravan. Perhaps you heard of my family's band? Wait a second, Tangerina said with a patronizing laugh. Your name is Lucy Goose? The young tambourine player turned bright red and sent Tangerina a scathing look. It's pronounced Goosey, Lucy said, but you would know that if you had any class. So why don't you just shut your mouth and mind all that beeswax of yours? Someone wearing a honeycomb has no right to be that high and mighty, just ever. Bristol, Xanthos, and Emeralda laughed at Lucy's remarks before they could stop themselves. Tangerina was agitated and her bumblebees buzzed aggressively. Don't listen to her, Tangerina, Skylene whispered. She's dressed like she just came from a funeral. Okay, I knew Pip was... I don't think she is. I don't think it's Pip. If you had any class, is hilarious, right? I don't think it's Pip. I think it's completely different. I'm sorry. Did a walking puddle just insult my clothes? Lucy asked. I'll have you know that I won this hat after arm wrestling a goblin, and I removed the caps on my necklace from bottles with my bare teeth, and then I drank them with a tribe of trolls. What's the coolest thing you've ever done? Evaporate? The children were floored by Lucy's comments. The girls' parents shook their heads and sighed at their daughter's rudeness. Please forgive Lucy. She's just a little nervous, Miss Goose said. Lucy, you promised us that you were going to be nice. This is no way to make new friends at your new school. Well, they started it, Lucy mumbled. Hold on, Tangerina said. She's staying here? Mr. and Mrs. Goosey glanced at each other with uncertainty. Well, actually, that's what we're here to speak with Madame Weatherberry about, Mr. Goosey said. Is she around? She's in her office on the second floor, Bristol said. I can take you there if you'd like. Well, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Mr. Goosey said. Bristol escorted the Goosey family. Oh, you assumed, yeah. Bristol escorted the Goosey family up the front steps of the castle, and Lucy shot Tangerina one last dirty look before stepping inside. Don't worry, honeypot, she said. Madame Weatherberry doesn't want someone like me at her school. I'll be out of your sticky hair before you know it. The Gooseys followed Bristol into the entrance hall and started floating up the stairs to the second floor. As they went, Lucy winced at everything she saw, like the castle was so ugly it hurt her eyes. Bristol knocked on Madame Weatherberry's door and she peeked inside. The fairy was pacing in front of her bubbling fireplace, obviously troubled by something. Madame Weatherberry? Bristol said. The fairy wasn't expecting company and jumped at the sound of her own name. Yes, Bristol, she said. These people are here to see you, Bristol said. They brought their daughter to the castle hoping that you could take her on as a student. Oh, really? Madame Weatherberry was surprised to hear this. Very well, please show them in. Bristol ushered the Gooseys into the office and then left to give the family privacy as they talked with Madame Weatherberry. She figured the conversation would delay lessons even further, so Bristol headed to her bedroom to retrieve a book to pass the time. Relatable content. As she searched her shelves, Bristol heard a peculiar murmuring coming from somewhere nearby. She followed the sound around like a dog following a scent and realized that it was coming from behind the bottom of the bookshelf. Bristol moved the books off the shelf and found a small hole in the wall behind them.
Curious, Bristol peeked through the hole and discovered that it peered directly into Madame Weatherbury's office on the second floor. She saw that Mr. and Mrs. Gousset were sitting across from Madame Weatherbury at her glass desk, and Lucy wandered around the office and inspected the fairy's belongings while the adults chatted, but the girl didn't seem impressed by anything that she found. Bristol didn't want to snoop on the family's conversation, but Mrs. Gousset said something that instantly caught her attention. Yeah, well, it all started with the ravens, she said. That's when we knew that Lucy was going to be special. The ravens? Madame Weatherbury asked. Oh my. Mrs. Gousset nodded. Yeah, while I was pregnant with Lucy, the birds showed up outside our home. We figured that they were passing by as they flew south for the winter, but even as the seasons changed, the ravens stayed. The larger Lucy grew in my womb, the more ravens flocked to our house. My husband did everything he could to get rid of them, but they never left. At night I went into labor. All the birds started screeching outside. It was deafening and honestly maddening to listen to, but as soon as Lucy was born, all the ravens just flew away. To this day, we don't know what they were doing there. Madame Weatherbury rubbed her chin as she listened to the story. Bristol could tell that the fairy knew exactly what the birds were doing at their house, but she didn't want to share that information yet. How interesting, Madame Weatherbury said. I imagine even a stranger phenomenon began happening shortly after she was born. Strange. Yes, strange to say the least, Mr. Gousset said, and it continued through her childhood. It was all very eerie, but harmless for the most part. The button eyes on her stuffed animals turned into real eyes, and they watched us as we moved around the house. We had to put covers over Lucy's crib because she would levitate when she took naps. If we turned our back on her while she was taking a bath, we'd find the whole tub suddenly filled with frogs. Those instances were inconvenient, but simple enough to handle back then, Mrs. Gousset said. But lately things have gotten completely out of hand. We're traveling musicians and we perform all over the world, but there are places we could never return to now because of the things that Lucy has done. Such as? Madame Weatherbury asked. Well, for instance, this one night we were performing for the pub in the Western Kingdom, Mr. Gousset recalled. The crowd had a lot to drink and they became really rowdy. They started booing us and Lucy got upset. She shook her fist at them and all the alcohol turned to dog urine. People were gagging and vomited all over the pub. Another time we were performing a private show for aristocrats at the Northern Kingdom, Mrs. Gousset recalled. Lucy was in the middle of a tambourine solo when a duchess in the front row began to yawn. It hurt Lucy's feelings and the duchess's braids suddenly turned into snakes. A few months ago, we were performing in a small theater in the Southern Kingdom, Mr. Gousset said. At the end of the night, the owner of the theater refused to pay us. He claimed our instruments were out of tune and hurt the audience's ears, so as we drove off, the whole theater just imploded behind us, as if it had been flattened by an earthquake. But all the buildings nearby seemed perfectly intact. Oh, my word, Madame Weatherbury said. Yeah, well, for the record, I'm proud of that last one, Lucy said. That jerk had it coming. Yeah, well, luckily no one has suspected any of these things were Lucy's fault, Mrs. Gousset said. Nonetheless, our act is gaining a reputation for tragedy. We're worried that people are going to realize who Lucy is and try to hurt her. That's why we brought her here to you, Mr. Gousset explained. We love our Lucy more than anything, but we can't take care of her anymore. She's just too much for us. Bristol knew that this must be heartbreaking for Lucy to hear. The girl stopped searching through Madame Weatherbury's things and went very still. She turned and gazed at the bubbles in the fireplace so that the adults wouldn't see the tears forming in her eyes. And how did you know about my academy? Madame Weatherbury inquired. Yeah, well, my brother's a minstrel for royalty in the Eastern Kingdom, Mrs. Gousset said. He was hiding in the next room when you visited Queen Equestria. He heard you discussing a plan for your Academy of Magic and how you asked the Queen for permission to recruit students from her kingdom. He knows all about our troubles with Lucy, and he wrote us immediately to tell us about your school. We spent the last 3 days in the in-between here looking for it. I see, Madame Weatherbury said. Well, Mr. and Mrs. Gousset, please do forgive me, but I have to be very frank with you. My academy isn't designed for students like your daughter. The gathering of macabre animals at her birth, the unsettling phenomenon that occurs when she was younger, and the problems she's been causing lately are not expressions of magic. Mr. and Mrs. Gousset looked at each other, and they both let out a long and exasperated breath. We're painfully aware of that, Madame Weatherbury, Mr. Gousset said. There are two sides to the magical community, and it's very clear which one our daughter belongs to, but we're hoping you might make an exception for Lucy. Please, Madam Weatherbury, Mrs. Gousset pleaded. She's a good kid who just needs a good home that understands her. My husband and I can't do it anymore. We're desperate for someone to help us. The Goussets' request wasn't a simple matter. Madame Weatherbury went quiet, and she leaned back in her glass chair as she continued. Tears ran down Lucy's round face, hearing her parents plead to get rid of her. Bristol's heart ached as she watched Lucy wipe her tears away before anyone noticed them, and after a few moments of careful consideration, Madame Weatherbury got to her feet and approached Lucy. She leaned down to the girl with a kind smile and placed a comforting hand on her shoulder. Well, it may be a challenge, but challenges are what life is all about, Madame Weatherbury said. I would love for you to join our academy, Lucy. I can't always promise I'll know how to assist you, but I will promise to do my best. Lucy was shocked. Obviously, acceptance to Madame Weatherbury's academy was the last thing she had expected and the very last thing she wanted. Lucy's parents, on the other hand, sighed with relief, and they embraced each other in celebration. Wait, Lucy exclaimed. I can't stay here. I don't belong here. Lucy, this is a wonderful thing, her mother said. Madame Weatherbury's going to provide a much better home for you than your father and I ever could. But I don't want to live at the academy, Lucy professed. I want to live with you. We're not just family, we're the Gousset troupe. You can't have a band without a star tambourine player. Actually, your uncle's going to join us on the road. He's going to take over all your solos with his fiddle. His fiddle? She was outraged. Lucy pulled her parents to the side of the office to have a private word, but Bristol was still perfectly within earshot. But Mom, Dad, today's my birthday, Lucy whispered to them. You can't abandon me on my birthday. This is for your own good, Lucy, Mrs. Gousset said. One day you're gonna understand. Mr. and Mrs. Gousset kissed their daughter goodbye and profusely shook Madame Weatherbury's hand. From her bedroom, Bristol saw the couple return to their colorful caravan outside, and they pedaled the vehicle into the distance and disappeared through the hedge barrier without a hint of remorse for leaving their daughter behind. Madame Weatherbury escorted Lucy to the third floor, and Bristol peered into the corridor as they walked by. The castle had already created a new room for Lucy, and a sixth door had appeared next to Bristol's bedroom. This will be your room, Lucy, Madame Weatherbury said. I hope you'll be very comfortable inside. The castle grows bedrooms based on the number of occupants, and the space is usually furnished for the specific needs of— Yeah, Lucy said. Thanks a million, Madame Weatherbury. If you don't mind, I'd like to be alone right now. Lucy entered her bedroom and slammed the door shut behind her. As soon as it was closed, Bristol and Madame Weatherbury could hear the girl sobbing on the other side. Do you think she's going to be all right? Bristol asked. This isn't going to be an easy adjustment for her, Madame Weatherbury said. I think we should postpone today's lessons until after lunch so that Lucy has time to get settled in. I'll let the others know. Madame Weatherbury left the corridor to tell the other students about the change of plans, and Bristol stayed in the doorway listening to Lucy cry in her bedroom. She knew exactly what it felt like to be rejected by a parent, and she tried to think of a way to make her new floor mate feel better. Bristol realized that there was very little she could say to ease Lucy's troubles, but maybe there was something that she could make. Bristol hurried down the spiral staircase to the first level of the castle, down the hall, through the dining room, and into the kitchen. Bristol hadn't seen the castle's kitchen yet, so she was surprised to find that it was 4 times the size of the kitchen at the Evergreen house. Mrs. V was in the middle of cooking lunch, and Bristol was taken aback by all the magic that was going into the meal's preparation. Fruits, vegetables, spices, and utensils floated through the air. There were bowls that stirred the ingredients on their own. Food was chopped and diced by hovering knives, and oven doors opened and closed without assistance. Trays of baked goods removed themselves from the oven's heat. Mrs. V stood at the center of the kitchen and conducted the magic around her like a symphony of invisible chefs. Oh, well, hello there, dear, Mrs. V said as she noticed Bristol. What brings you to my neck of the woods? Did you need a snack? Oh, no, I'm actually still full from breakfast, thank you, Bristol said. Mrs. V, I was hoping that I could use your kitchen to make something myself. You mean on your own? Mrs. V said. You're not trying to take my job now, are you? Because I'm warning you, it's not as glamorous as I'm making. Look. Oh, no, it's just that it's a family recipe, she said. I mean, I could make it in my sleep, but I hate to interrupt you while you're in the middle of cooking lunch, though. I promise I'll stay out of your way. Yeah, it's no problem at all for me, Mrs. V said. Family recipes are always welcome unless the family is in the recipe. Well, go ahead and help yourself to whatever you need. A little more than an hour later, Bristol carried 2 forks and a freshly baked chocolate cake to the third floor. Mrs. V didn't have any birthday candles, so Bristol had to borrow 13 candles from different candelabras and lanterns throughout the castle. Each candle was different shape and color, but it did the trick just the same. Bristol took a deep breath as she stood outside Lucy's bedroom and knocked with her elbow. "Lucy," she said, "it's, Bristol Evergreen, the girl who showed you and your parents to Madame Weatherbury's office?" "Yeah, what do you want?" Lucy groaned from inside. "I have a surprise for you if you could just open the door," Bristol said. And a couple of moments later, Lucy reluctantly opened her bedroom door. Her eyes were bloodshot from crying, and she was very surprised to see the lit up birthday cake in Bristol's hand. "Happy birthday!" Bristol cheered. "I hope you like chocolate." Unfortunately, her floor mate's reaction was not what Bristol was expecting. "How did you know it was my birthday?" Lucy asked suspiciously. Bristol opened her mouth to respond, but she realized she didn't have any words to explain herself. She was so focused on cheering Lucy up, she completely forgot that she knew it was her birthday because she'd been eavesdropping. "Didn't you mention it when you arrived?" "No." Lucy folded her arms. "Oh, well, then it must have been a lucky hunch," Bristol said with a nervous laugh. Forgive the candles. You said you were 13, I assumed anyway, right?" Lucy wasn't buying it. "You were eavesdropping on a meeting with Madame Weatherbury, weren't you?" She raised an accusatory finger. Bristol frantically shook her head, but it only made her seem guiltier. Okay, yes," she confessed. "I admit it. I was eavesdropping. I didn't mean to pry, but I heard your mother talking about the ravens, and I couldn't look away." "If you were in a goblin colony, I could have your ears cut off for snooping," Lucy said. "Look, I'm really sorry for invading your privacy," Bristol said. "I know what it's like, though, to be dumped in a strange place by your parent. I heard you say that it was your birthday, so I thought if I baked you a cake, it might cheer you up, and it was a mistake. So I'll leave you alone now." Bristol was furious at herself for handling the situation so poorly. She hurried down the corridor before Lucy could have any more reasons to dislike her, and just as Bristol reached the stairs, Lucy stopped her. "Lucky for you, I'm not a girl who turns down sweets," she called. "That cake smells delicious, so I'll forgive your treachery just this once." Lucy opened her bedroom door and gestured for Bristol to come inside. Bristol was thrilled for a second chance, and she rushed into the bedroom before Lucy changed her mind. As she stepped inside, Bristol had to remind herself that she was entering a 13-year-old girl's bedroom because Lucy's chamber looked like a tavern. There was a large billiard table in the center of the floor, and a row of dartboards hung on the wall, and just above that was a big sign that said, "Play hard, work hardly." Another wall was covered with musical instruments and dozens of posters that advertised the Gousset Troupe's past performances. "I know, it's so cute, they became buddies." Every corner was filled with massive taxidermied animals that were morbid hybrids of different species. Last, Bristol noticed that instead of chairs or a bed, the room had beanbags and a hammock. "Wow," Bristol said. "This is, quite a room." "Yeah, I got eclectic taste," Lucy said. "That's what happens when you grow up in show business. You get exposed to a lot more than the average child." Lucy pushed the two beanbags together, and the girls had a seat. Bristol held the cake up, and Lucy closed her eyes and blew out the candles. "You see the barrel of peppermint cider anywhere?" Lucy asked. No," Bristol said. "Dang, my wish didn't come true." Lucy leaned back in her beanbag and shoveled the chocolate cake into her mouth. Bristol couldn't take her eyes off the Gousset Troupe posters on the wall. She was fascinated by all the locations that Lucy's family had been to. "Have you really performed in all those places?" she asked. "Oh, yeah," Lucy bragged. "And those don't even include the underground circuit." "What's the underground circuit?" Bristol asked. "You know, the places they don't include on the map," she explained. "Goblin colonies, troll camps, elf campgrounds, ogre conventions, you name it. The Goussets have played it. Gosh, this cake is really good." "The creatures in the in-between didn't hurt you?" "No, not at all," she said. "The creatures in the in-between are so desperate for entertainment they wouldn't dare. They're also the best audience that a performer could ask for. Subjugated species always know how to have a good time." "Oh, look," Bristol said and pointed to one of the posters. "You performed in Chariot Hills. That's where I'm from." Lucy clenched her teeth. "Yikes," she said. "The Southern Kingdom is the worst place to perform. They got all these rules about what artists are allowed to do. We can't sing profanity. We can't play too loudly. We can't dance crudely. Everyone's got to be clothed. They take all the fun out of it. I can't even bang my tambourine on my hip without being fined. As if, like, that's the show you're looking for? Then just go to church, am I right?" "Yeah, I'm not surprised," Bristol said. "I can't tell you how glad I am to be away from there. I would have given anything for a childhood like yours." "Yeah, I've had some good times," Lucy said. "I guess all my adventures are over now that I'm stuck in this place, though." Lucy stopped eating and she looked sadly at the floor. I wouldn't say that, Bristol said. You should give this place a chance, 'cause it might surprise you. Yeah, easy for you to say. You belong here, Lucy said, but you heard what Madame Weatherbury told my parents. The academy isn't meant for children like me. Bristol sighed, and she understood how Lucy felt more than the girl realized. To be honest with you, I'm not really sure that I belong here either, she said. All of Madame Weatherbury's students have been doing magic their whole lives. I just recently found out that I have magical abilities, and I need the help of an old spell book to even conjure anything. And to make matters worse, I'm apparently the only fairy in the entire world who doesn't have a specialty. Xanthos has his fire, Emeralda has her jewels, Scylene has water, Tangerina has her charm, Lucy asked sarcastically. Don't worry about Tangerina, Bristol said. She grows on you after a while. Yeah, but so does fungus. Back to my point, Bristol continued. You're not the only person who feels like they shouldn't be here. I know it seems like Madame Weatherbury made a mistake, but I doubt she would open her doors for us if she didn't genuinely think she could help us. Yeah, but at least you're a fairy, Lucy said. I'm a witch, Bristol. That means that my heart is full of darkness and all my powers are fooled by the evil that's growing inside me. You have no idea what it's like to know one day, no matter what I do, I'm going to become an ugly, mean old hag. I'm going to spend my adulthood cursing people and collecting cats. I don't even like cats. The thought made Lucy burst into tears, and she rapidly scooped the cake up and put it in her mouth to drown her sadness. With a couple more bites, she had finished the whole plate. Bristol dried Lucy's tears with the corner of her gray and black striped dress. Hey, if it makes you feel any better, I don't think you're a witch, Bristol said. Are you crazy? She asked. Madame Weatherbury specifically said, No. Madame Weatherbury never said you were a witch, Bristol said. She just said that her academy isn't meant for students like you. That could mean a number of things. Besides, if you had evil and darkness in your heart, there's no way that you could enjoy performing as much as you do. It takes way too much joy and excitement to make audiences happy. Lucy nodded along. Yeah, it also takes exceptional talent, she sniffled. Don't forget the exceptional talent. Exactly, Bristol said. A wicked old witch could never have that in her. Lucy wiped at her nose on Bristol's sleeve and she shrugged. I suppose so, she said. If you don't think I'm a witch, then what the heck am I? Because causing all that creepy stuff to happen around me... Bristol tried her best to think of something to put the girl at ease. Maybe you're just a fairy with a specialty for trouble, she said. Lucy thought the suggestion was so ridiculous that the corner of her mouth curled into a tiny grin. Bristol was glad to give Lucy her first smile in the academy. You know what? That's the dumbest thing I've ever heard, Lucy said, but I do appreciate your effort. Personally, I think life's way too complicated for anyone's fate to be set in stone, Bristol said. Take it from me. In the last month, I've gone from being a schoolgirl to a maid to a prisoner in a correctional facility to an inmate, and now I'm a student to become a fairy. Whoa, Lucy said. I thought my life was eventful. I'm just saying nothing is certain until it's certain, Bristol said. In fact, whether you become an ugly old witch or not, there's only one thing that we know for sure. Oh, what's that? Lucy asked. Tangerina and Scylene won't think any differently of you. And without missing a beat, Bristol and Lucy both erupted into laughter. They chuckled so hard that their stomachs hurt and happy tears rolled down their faces. Boy, they must hate my guts, Lucy said. Well, despite my intentions, I'm glad I made at least one friend today. Thanks for being so nice to me, Bristol. Something tells me we're going to be partners in crime for a very, very long time. Yeah, me too, Lucy, Bristol said. Me too. Aww, they're buddies. Yay. All right, that was page 253. I know we went a little over today, but she slept so long, I was like, we might as well finish the chapter. I don't think she will sleep through the next one, so we'll go ahead and call it there because the next one is, quite long. But that was amazing. I know, they're going to be partners in crime for a very, very long time. Don't we know it? Don't we know it? Well, today was exactly, yeah, she's starting to wiggle. I knew she was going to wake up soon. Today was exactly what you could want out of book club, and I am so grateful that you all spent it with me. And